Welcome to another episode of Cooking Healthy with Coastline. I'm Katlynn Ferreira, registered dietitian, and today I'll be walking us through a very simple recipe using mostly shelf-stable foods. Now, March is National Nutrition Month, and a theme that comes up with older adults is how to get the most nutrition out of every bite, considering smaller portions and certainly budget. So I've modified a recipe, which is a vegetable lentil bake. It's essentially a casserole, and I'll go ahead and get started. The lentils have already been cooked because they are going to be the base for the dish, and it's going to provide mostly protein and fiber. And I've got two different types of legumes. I have two different types of legumes. I've got split green peas and red lentils. Those are already ready to be put down, but we'll start cooking the rest of the veggies. Once the pan's heated a little bit, go ahead and start with a little bit of oil. And I've got one yellow onion chopped here. Okay. We'll let this cook for just a couple minutes, just until they're a little fragrant and translucent. And aside from this onion and the spinach, everything else included in this recipe you could have on hand right now, just waiting to get used and you're not sure how to use it. Or maybe you're looking for a new way to use ingredients that you might always have on hand. Hopefully this inspires you to try mixing them together in something new. And even onions do last a little while, so you might have some hanging out in your cabinet, pantry. And it doesn't take long. So once they start to look like they're cooking a little bit, watch out for any flying onions. Go ahead and mix the rest of vegetables that you'd like to add. I've picked out a bag of frozen vegetables. They're already thawed, just rinsed with some cold water and sat for a bit while I was prepping the other ingredients. So you could do the same with whatever frozen veggies you have, or you could use different types of canned vegetables. Just make sure you rinse them to take out any extra sodium. Or you could use fresh and chop them up. But to save you time and a couple dollars, I've chosen the frozen today. The blend has carrots, broccoli, corn, lima beans, and green beans. We'll let these cook together, and they don't need to be totally cooked because they're going to go in the oven. And something I really like about this recipe is that the temperature for this dish to cook at is really low. I have it at 190 degrees. So although it requires some baking, it's a low temp, so a little bit safer. And I'll season it with a blend I've put together. It's got onion powder, garlic powder, cumin, chili powder, and a little bit of black pepper. You could season it how you like. I just think that these will be really good in this particular dish. These are kind of my go-to seasonings as well. While this cooks a bit, I'm going to put down some of the legumes, the split green peas and red lentils, into our baking dish. So start getting that ready. If you're lucky enough, you could find some cooked lentils already in a can at the store. I've only had luck at certain places, but when you find them, it's a really nice option to help save cooking time, and you could keep them on hand for whenever you feel like you need something to eat and you haven't gone to the store. You could resort to something like this. Now the red lentils did overcook just a tad. However, they're all going to get mixed into this dish and baked together. So I thought, not worth wasting them. Once the veggies start to feel a little bit tender, you're ready to mix them with the remaining ingredients. I'm going to take this off heat and add it to a bowl of some spinach. Now spinach does cook down quite a bit, so it does look like a lot here. However, I think it'll actually it won't be too much. I'm just gonna spoon it in. Oop. These onions are all over the place. Oop. With these vegetables being a little bit warm, I think that'll help with the spinach as well, making it a little bit tender before I put it into the oven. So some spinach, and then I've got here a can of diced tomatoes, no salt added, and they did have a little bit of Italian seasoning. I'll throw those in. Again, canned item, probably in your cabinet. And the recipe calls for about a cup of low sodium vegetable stock, but I didn't want to waste the juice from the canned tomatoes, so I did half cup of the low sodium vegetable stock. And because the can of tomatoes was no salt added, I felt comfortable that we could use the rest, the second half cup, and avoid wasting that little bit of tomato juice. So give this a good mix. Combine all of the vegetables together. If you want, you could break up the spinach as well. Probably would have been a good idea. These leaves were a little bit bigger. If you're using baby spinach or if you use frozen spinach, a good thing to keep in mind is that you really want to squeeze out any excess moisture before you bake it. Okay. Just going to add a tad of Italian breadcrumbs. Ooh. It's kind of a messy dish. It smells good, it's very colorful. I think it's great for those colder months. If you're looking for something to feel cozy, turning on the oven does help a little bit. Okay, so I'm just gonna spoon out some of this vegetable mixture into our baking dish. I'll just put this over here. Seems this might get a little bit messy. Okay. I think you could also add some protein to this if you'd like, extra protein in addition to the legumes. Maybe do some canned tuna, or if you have some cooked meat like chicken or beef or turkey that you've had from another meal, could certainly mix that into this. Just depending on the type of dish you're using to bake, just fill it. Okay. And then I'm going to top it with some shredded cheddar. And it's ready to go in the oven. Once the dish is in the oven, it'll cook for about 15 to 20 minutes or until golden brown and the cheese is nice and melted. If you have some left over, like I do here, you could use the remaining vegetable stock or whatever stock that you used and turn it into a soup. You could keep that in your fridge, or you could freeze it into several portions, have that on hand as well. Or you could make it into a stew, kind of similar, using maybe extra protein that you'd already had cooked up. And again, just highlighting that this recipe brings in some key players that we often consider packaged foods because they're canned or frozen, and yet they can be really nutritious, as you've seen in this dish. It's just important to take note of food labels and looking for things like no salt added or low sodium, and things with no or low sugar or added sugar, and paying attention to the balance of meals. So this here has a load of vegetables, as you can see, and protein and fiber, lots of fiber from the split green peas. Quarter cup provides about 17 grams of fiber, so that's excellent. And just thinking about how to balance foods that you might already have in your cupboard. Once the dish looks like it's ready to be taken out of the oven, go ahead, check on it, and everything's already cooked, so it's really just putting everything, allowing everything to simmer together, and this looks perfectly melted together and ready to dig in. So thank you for watching this episode of Cooking Healthy with Coastline. Hope you feel inspired to try a new recipe using some items that might already be in your home. Thanks.